Let's begin, eh? Okay, so tonight we're talking about sound, yeah? Universal sound is just, I think, a fancy title that someone gave this talk a long time ago. Really, we're talking about the power of sound. Yeah, the force and the power that sound has, the capacity. So, to begin, we have to sort of understand the power that is sound. Really, everything in creation is sound. Everything, yeah? And it's funny, if you'd have said this in, like, I don't know, 1920s or 30s, people would have been like, well, that's an interesting supposition, so, they would have spoke very nicely. But they wouldn't really have understood what you meant. Whereas now, with all the advancement in, technology and everything, that it's now sort of even quite acceptable. Do you know what I mean? With all the string theory stuff and everybody beginning to see that really there is a basis in sound in all things. That really everything has if everything vibrates, right? If everything is constantly in a state of vibration, that's what you learn at school. You learn that everything is always moving. The air is always moving. Even the table, whatever, the atoms in the table are always in movement. And therefore, as everything is always in movement, everything is always making sound. Do you know what I mean? We sort of forget that. If everything is nothing moves perfectly silently. It's always audible. It's kind of like the idea that, you definitely can't see something, and then they come up with the understanding of infrared and ultraviolet, and suddenly they find the whole spectrum of things that you can see. And the same thing, there's a whole spectrum of things that we don't hear. Yeah. And that's because really everything emits sound. And the reason for that is that at the beginning of creation, everything actually comes or is formed from sound. So we sort of started talking about this in the previous weeks, but about the 7 round 7 races, talking about our, how do I put it? It's like 7 round 7 races about our history, how we came here, yeah? About this race that we live in now. That means everyone on the planet, yeah? Everyone in this living on the planet now. And that there were actually previous humanities each time, what we call a race. Got to be careful with the word race nowadays because people don't understand what you mean. When I say a race, I mean like that, like a whole humanity living on this earth of all different colors, yeah, all different people, and so of which we're the fifth. And so, in that sense, when we go right back to the beginning of creation, that's where we find sound. Yeah, in the beginning of creation, before creation unfolds. We sort of drew it last time. We had the beginning of the great cosmic day. When there is no thing, yeah? Ayin. Well, I didn't write it there. Ayin's written over there in the Kabbalah. The word ayin, which is one of the words for the absolute, which means no thing, not nothing, just no thing. Negative existence, negative light. When people see the great reality of the absolute, often what they see is a terrifying darkness. Not because it's actually darkness, but because it is what exists before light exists. And when it enters into creation, it becomes light. So in the beginning of creation, we have the absolute, the ayin, the absolute activity and repose, complete activity and non-activity, all in one spot. And then what happens, and we talked about this before, is that then we have this energy pouring out into creation like that, and then we have all of the various densifications of creation, like we talked about in the 7 round 7 races, and then it goes back. And that's where we have the cosmic day. Creation goes out into this created physical space, and then it goes back into absolute, and it continues. Now, what we want to talk about now is how that relates to the power of sound. So, at the beginning of creation, at the beginning of the dawn of the creation of our world, yeah, there's many, many ideas about that. The Big Bang's a beautiful theory, isn't it? That everything just went pop, and then it kind of just went everywhere, It was a fantastic accident. So, in Gnosis, we talk about what we call the Elohim. Now, the Elohim, the word Elohim is an interesting word because it's a word that means God. There's many, 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 many words for God in Hebrew, 72, I believe. But this particular one means masculine, feminine, and then neutral in one word. That's what the word Elohim is. It means, it's often referred to as the army of the voice. So the creative Elohim are made up of masculine, feminine, and then the neutral, the neuter. We don't really have that so much in our culture. So masculine, feminine, and the neutral. And so at the beginning of creation, before anything even unfolds, you have this great absolute, and then into the absolute, there is created a space. We'll talk about the why of that another day, because that's a whole nother lecture to talk about why it is that we have this sense of activity and inactivity, even in the absolute itself, even in the agnostos theos. And the reason for creation itself too, because there is some study into that. But what we're going to talk about is that beginning, that moment, that beginning, that dawn of creation. Like in the beginning of the Gospel of John, where he says, in the beginning was the Word, yeah? And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with all created things. And so what we're talking about here is the link between the creation and the Word. And that link is exact. What it is at the very beginning of creation, as when there is a space created, so you have, I haven't really left a lot of space here. Let's just draw this up here. You have the absolute, and then everything that's outside the absolute. What happens is the absolute creates a space. We're just going to go like that, but it's probably more like this. If the absolute's this, you can't define the undefinable, but let's just say the absolute's a square. Let's define the undefinable as a square. The absolute, for whatever reason, I don't want to go into it tonight, but they talk, well, just to talk about it lightly, there can be like a slight imperfection within the absolute. And what that imperfection is, there are beings or essences within the great ocean of life who for a millisecond, milliseconds don't exist in the absolute, but for a quick moment want to be more than just in the absolute. And what happens when that happens is the absolute will instantly sort of quarantine that space, like that. And suddenly a space will be created, and then all of the light and power of the absolute will enter into that, and then creation unfolds in that space. This is called the Ayin, then you have the Ayin Sof, and the Ayin Sof Weor is where everything starts to come into power. That's Kabbalah, which we're going to go into in a couple of weeks. So basically, at the beginning of creation, this is a very fast way of explaining it, all this energy just suddenly pouring into creation, but there is an order to that. And so what happens is certain beings who are actually self-realized, meaning beings who have come and have existed in this world before, have existed in the physical world and have reached certain degrees and gone back. Certain beings will actually come out of the absolute first, and then they will sing into activity the seeds of creation. So the power and force of creation is there, but first what will happen is you will have the Elohim, which is three. It actually comes out as one group of great beings, but then that group of great beings will then section itself off into three groups. And the reason for this is because of the creative power of three. Our entire world and known universe, who knows what goes on outside our solar system? We have no idea. We kind of look at it with a thing and go, well, it looks like that, I'm pretty sure. But we have no idea. But in our known world we are here, everything takes three. Do you understand what I mean? You want to have a child? It's three. Man and woman, I know it's controversial nowadays, come together and then you have a child. Yeah? Masculine, feminine, sperm, egg, and then creation. Even the way we speak is like that, yeah? You have the wind and the vocal cord. Voice, three. Everything that is created comes out of three. Do you understand what I mean? Even when we deal with people psychologically, there's always three. You, me, and then our relationship. Always that way. Always. And when we don't account for this, problems. Yeah. People want to just have it like that. We just talk and then nothing else. There's always something else. That's just the way it is. We have to learn to navigate that. So the power of three is what creates. It is the force of creation. Three always creates, which is why, and what I've drawn here is the Kabbalah. This is ancient mysticism. It's adopted and used heavily by the Hebrews. Very, very old Jewish people. Not so much nowadays, but still. And so, but this is the Kabbalistic system. And so here we have the power of three, right? And they refer to these the top three, and we have a picture over there too. The top three, they actually call this the world of the Logos. And the word Logos is Greek and literally just means word. Yeah? Meaning that we have the first word, the second word, and the third word. Yeah? And these are like this. We have a affirmation, a negation, and then a conciliation. Positive, negative, and then the conciliation between the two. So they form themselves into this power, into this. And one of the biggest and most silliest things that we've ever created in humanity is to try and attribute the words good and bad to that process. Because that process has nothing. When you say positive and negative, it doesn't mean that. It's like in the currents of a electricity. You have positive and negative, but positive isn't better than negative. I'm just getting that completely square in the mind first, because we talk about positive and negative reviews. When you start a business, or you go, maybe you do positive and negative reviews on Yelp. But that's not the case. When we talk about positive and negative, we're talking about energetic currents. Yeah, energetic currents. So we have a positive and negative current, and these beings break themselves up into these two, and then the one that brings them together. And then they sing into creation, the power, or they sing into activity, the seeds of creation that then unfolds. And it unfolds in accordance with the order of 7, meaning first it unfolds into spirit, then consciousness, then cause, then into the world of mind, astral, ether, and then the physical world. And so that's what happens. And always we find these principles. The power of 3 is creation, the power of 7 as ordering principle. Yeah. So in that sense, this is the beginning. This is how the beginning of creation. So we have the Elohim that come together, the first beings to exit out of creation. Then they bring into activity the ray of creation that creates the 7 worlds that we live, move, and have our being. We exist in these 7 worlds every day, constantly. Yeah. We live in the world. We have a spirit in the world of spirit. Yeah. We have a consciousness that exists in the world of consciousness. Yeah. I have my own essence that exists in the world of cause. I have my own mind that exists in the mental world. We gave a whole lecture about that early on in the program. I have my astral body that exists in the astral world. We each have an etheric body, and there is an etheric body here, an etheric world. And of course, we have a physical body that exists in the physical world. We are constantly living on 7 planes of existence. Yeah. If my mind is off, not here in the lecture, then I'm not present in this mental space, if you understand what I mean. And a person who's really awake would be able to see that. The Master Samael saw things like that. When he was giving his lectures, he was a very awake person. He could see these sorts of things. So, those Elohim, those creative Elohim, sing into activity the ray of creation, and then they organize and order these worlds so they're each one out of the other. And so, this is, I don't know if you've ever read it, but if you ever have a chance, the Silmarillion by Tolkien, not Lord of the Rings, the Silmarillion, it's very different, is beautifully describes this process. It's amazing. And now we all know that Tolkien based all of his books on Old Finnish and sagas and all this sort of stuff. All of his stuff that he did, he was studying Old Norse and reading all these beautiful old mythologies and that from up in the north of the world. That's what he based Lord of the Rings on. Hence dwarves and elves, which are actually originally part of that mythology. But he writes this beautiful story at the beginning of the Silmarillion about how the world is created by these 7 beings, and but one being ruling over them, and he asks them to sing. He creates them, he brings them into creation, 7 beings, then he asks them to sing, and then they all sing, but then one of them one of them sings kind of like he wants to sing his own song, as it were, and because of that they create disharmony, and each time he has to stop them because they lose their harmony, and they do it over and over again, and then 3 times he finally finishes it, and then afterwards he takes these 7 beings into a space and he shows them their song, and while they were singing he had created a space and their song was creating the world. So while they were singing, you have this beautiful, like the mountains coming up and the plains, and then people start to come, and as it starts to happen, those 7 beings actually feel compelled to enter into their own creation. They feel compelled to become part of what they created. It's really beautifully done. That the one of them Obviously, the one who really wants to enter it is the selfish one because he wants to rule it, But then other ones feel the need to go in. One of them, well, the lady, she falls in love with the elves, and so she becomes part of her own creation, simultaneously having sung creation into activity, but also being a god in her own creation. It's quite a beautiful story, but very well done, Obviously based on some saga where someone really understood it or had a deeper understanding of this sort of Kabbalistic lore. Because remembering, of course, that this just always has been. So yeah, and then they go through it and et cetera, and that's Lord of the Rings comes after that story. So anyway, moving on. So this is the creative power. And what we're talking about here, and the reason I've written singing without bodies is so that we can sort of understand what we're talking about here. We're talking about a song that exists long before the physical world exists. Yeah. So we're talking about something of purely energetic and geometric coming from these beings, a creation that is exiting directly from the depths of their essence and their spirit, entering into creation and organizing and moving and all things. Yeah. And so, these often get given the name cosmocrators in creation, but usually referred to as the Elohim or the great army of the voice, those who create all of the order and sing into activity all of creation. So that is one of the great powers of the word. So we have this amazing power of the word that this is a very high level, and you hear these beautiful stories of if you read ancient texts about the lamas and how they went through these, some of these lamas had these amazing abilities with the word, lamas who could move whole areas, mountains, and just amazing power with the word. Even the Christ talks about it. He said, "You have faith as the grain of a mustard seed, you would say to the mountain, move hence, and it would." Yes, and he's talking about something real, a power of the word that people can create. In fact, if you read, we're doing a retreat for our second chamber, our members, about Christ and about the Gospels, and I've been studying it lately, and it's amazing just how much power of the word there is. Every time that Jesus does anything, it's the word, pretty much entirely. He speaks to the man, says, "Get out," to the demon, and gets out. He speaks to the ocean, says, "Silence," and it's quiet. It's all with the word. He's not doing some sort of special dance or something. It's with the word. So his power came from the word. The Christ's power came from the word. But it's probably best to say it manifests from the word. Because like we've been talking a lot in these classes, the real power or the real force inside of us is within our sexual energy. Yeah? This is our creative energy. As we know, the sun places the creative energy within each one of us. We each have this force. And it's the great hope that we will eventually turn that into something more powerful. As it stands, we can use it to create. It is the only way that we can create life at all. Yes, scientists have tried. They've tried to create something without life. It doesn't work. They've tried to create living. You just take like a cell out of something and then recreate. Like in all the science fiction films, they're like, "Oh, the person lost his arm. That's okay. We'll just grow him a new arm." But science has tried. It doesn't work. And so they just create like a flubber, greasy thing that kind of looks like an arm and looks like something you see in a horror movie, and you go, "Oh, it's quite grotesque," And then they try to get it to move, and it doesn't move. The best they can do is actually just take a piece off something that's already living, like take someone else's arm and try and put it on someone else. And it has worked occasionally, but even then, they don't really understand what they're doing. They're like, "Oh, that should work. The blood type's the same. I'll just slap that on there." And, "Oh, it didn't work. Okay." And so they don't really understand because they don't understand. One, they don't understand about the etheric world. That's a huge part. Every physical organ has an etheric counterpart, so it's more than just physical things. That's why they put things together and say it should accept or it won't. They often don't know because they don't understand the etheric. We did understand that in Atlantis, which is why we had those beautiful technology in Atlantis. And I'd say our karma now is because we did understand Atlantis and the horrible things that happened in Atlantis. So anyway, we have this great sexual creative power inside of ourselves, and we can use that really beautifully, And one of the connections that we have is there is actually a connection between our larynx and our sexual organs. It exists within us. It's funny because it's quite straightforward. It's like it even happens to you, especially like in men, it's really obvious. The second that you hit that puberty, which is when your body is beginning to go through that sexual change, you suddenly your voice begins to drop. at the same time as your body, as your sexual energy is starting to produce and become active inside of you. And so there's actually a lot of power or connection between the sexual force, and it's actually a person's sexual force, and we'll talk about it when we get down to the power of the physical work. It's the person, you can perceive a person's force or a person's creative energy. That's what the sexual energy is creative force within them through the power of the word, good or bad. Whether a person has a very negative, creative, strong power inside them, or whether they have something really quite positive, you can feel it in the word. The word has an amazing, amazing force. And that's, as I said, because it's connected to that is why it has that force. Not because independent of that. That's why a person can give a beautiful lecture with every single word in just the right place. Yeah, I've tried to do that. I've tried to write the perfect lecture with everything just in its, a word for everything and everything in its place. You know, I've tried to do that, and I've done it. I've had people walk up to me and say, "That was perfect." I said, "Oh, thank you," and then they just never come back. You know what I mean? Whereas if you speak with experience, if you put into activity these teachings, the transmutation, the work, and all these things, it's completely different. My father draws a huge crowd every time he talks, and yet he talks often, I guess people would say, he can sometimes be a little bit colloquial with his expressions. Yeah, let's say even perhaps, I don't know, a bit blokey. Yeah, he's a very awkward man. And yet people come back over and over because the force is the power in the word that speaks, not necessarily the eloquence, as it were. He can be eloquent too. His comments on Shakespeare are out of this world. But at the same time, it's not about, the most beautifully written piece, you can read it, but it's boring because the person hasn't got the power. You know what I mean? And not to be rude, but I'm reading the Bible, and I'll be honest with you, the Bible's pretty droll. If you've read the Bible, it's droll. I have to give a whole 5 days on it, and it's droll. It's so hard to read. When you understand it, you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. But other times you're like, oh, man, I don't get it. And this is so long. And, I got to the bit where it was explained, in Luke, he explains how the Christ comes back to Abraham, and it's just like a whole page of names. It's like, who is the son of Zebedee? Who is the son of this? Who is the son of that? Who's the son of this? And you're reading this and you're like, why? Mark didn't do this. You know why? Mark's just boiled down Luke. I know I've been reading them all. Mark's just Luke, but he just boils it down to like the Lumo Gospel. It's 2 hours. He's 3. So, but why is it so powerful? Why has it had people going crazy for years? 2,000 years. People have been all over the world because of it. Translated to more languages and more influence. It even has higher influence than other religions, which should be the same because they still teach the same thing, right? Why? Because the power of the word. Yeah? The guys who wrote it were completely awake. Yeah, they had power, they had force, they had created, they had amazing creative power within themselves. That's why people listened to them. Not just because they had really good ideas, because those ideas have been said over and over and over again, and it doesn't mean anything. You ever had a pep talk with someone who doesn't believe in what they're saying? It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Someone goes out there, yeah, get out there and win or don't win. When we were kids, right? My father coached a soccer team once because no one else would do it, and my father had this idea that winning was completely unimportant, right? And you can all say, "Yep, that's great," but just to quote Rainier Knizia, who's a great board game designer, he said, "When playing a game, the goal is always to win, but that's not what's important." So, at the same time, you still need to adhere to the goal. Otherwise, people don't even care. You know what I mean? And so we had this whole problem where, we would do soccer training and what are we going to do? It's like, just have fun. And people just kind of throw a ball at each other and laugh. And we lost every game. And we just got absolutely hosed by people. It was horrible. We had like 2 Italian guys on our team who were amazing. And they left because they just couldn't deal with my dad. And we just lost every time. But I remember, we just didn't, I remember looking over once at someone else getting a pep talk, from one of those dads who's just only about soccer, And he was like, "Listen up, come here, boys, get in real close, come in. I'm going to talk to you about this. We're going to strike him. We're going to kill him. We're going to kill him. What are we gonna do? Get out! Yeah! Get out there! And they're all and they just like steamroll the other team, and I was like, wow, you know. And Dad'd be there, and he's like, he had this Tibetan Buddhist hat. It was like a beanie. It had the little the little conch shell with the smoke. It was kind of like half on his head like that. I had that, and he really liked fingerless gloves. He used to get cold a lot in Adelaide. Kind of like walk up with his little sling bag and be like, all right, guys. And that's it. That was our entire thing. We're like, are you going to say some words, Dad? And he's like, kick the ball, over there. And he's like, and I remember the kids would just be like, they'd be like, have a good time. It's all about having a good time, isn't it? Just have a good time, And then he'd just go and sit under a tree and do a meditation, not even watch the game. And it was like, this is what we used to do. No, I'm not ragging on that, but I'm saying, like, you feel it, like when you, that beautiful talk. And often people will say that, like when you hear about a great win on a sports thing or a great battle, people will talk about the pep talk that happened before as often being what did it. Do you know what I mean? Like, knowing how to talk to the people, knowing how to inspire them. So we'll go into the word like that in a minute. First, I want to talk about vibratory affinities. This is something quite interesting. As I'm saying, everything vibrates. Everything has sound. So in that sense, everything has a key note. Me, you, the chair, the ground, the house, everything has a key note that actually holds it together. We sort of see this in the glass. You hit the high note, you can shatter the glass. Yeah? A person with the power of the word could actually destroy and create using the word. Yeah, this is the same, we're talking about the Christ, the same thing that helped him in his creation of all the fish and the bread, his knowledge of all these things. But to go one step further too, if you know about vibratory affinities, it's actually quite amazing. Yeah, like do you guys know what vibratory affinities are? Like, if you play an instrument, let's say you have two guitars in the room, and if you strike a chord on one guitar, the other guitar will instantly pick it up and start playing it at the same time. And you might not even notice it unless you're there with your hand on the guitar and you feel the chord vibrating. Yeah, a guy showed us once. It was beautiful. They had two electric guitars on opposite sides of the room. It's so exact that you can't tell. If you strike the note and stop it, the other one will stop at the exact same time. But he figured out a way of doing it. He struck a chord on, he had two electric guitars, and he struck a chord on one guitar, and then he just dropped the amp, he turned the amp off without making any noise. And because of that, and then he showed us, he picked up the other guitar and pressed it, and it was the one that stopped. I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. So they were on opposite sides of the room. They picked up the exact same note, the exact same pitch, the exact same frequency at the exact same time. The second it was played, the other one just picked it up. This is very interesting. I mean, I'm going to go into that psychologically as we go later about the connection, thus therefore, between everything and the way that everything picks up the affinities. But it's quite amazing. Our knowledge of this as a humanity is how we built such beautiful structures. The old auditoriums were built so that you didn't require in any way, shape, or form any PA system. Do you know what I mean? The old systems, they were just built in such a way that it reflected the sound. I remember at my when I got married, my wife and I, we got married in this, it was like a garden in front of where I grew up, and it was a big fig tree in the middle, and then around the outside it was all slate, and then little garden beds with lavender. And I remember I just got those little, those little hamburger speakers, they're like that big. I used to unclip them, and they kind of get bass by unclipping them. Do you know the ones? Little, talk about little round speakers. And I think I bought 3 of them, and just placed them. You could sort of daisy chain them together. You could connect one to another. And I just put them around. And it was amazing. I couldn't believe it. When you put them outside, it was no noise whatsoever. You couldn't even hear them. But if you put them at just the right points up against the slate would vibrate with them. It would move along, and it would just threw the sound up. And it was just loud. It was just, the harmonics were amazing in what was essentially a garden. But because of the slate reflected the sound so beautifully. So we used to understand vibratory affinities, the reflection of sound, all this sort of stuff. Nowadays, we just sort of put a big bloody amp there, lots of electricity, and go, yeah, that's it, yeah, that's loud, yeah, loud, yeah, that's what it's like. It's just, anyway, it's not the same. So that's the keynotes. And so it's because of this that we've had such an amazing force using mantric language, yeah? It's because of keynotes that we can work with the mantra. Our chakras vibrate with vibratory affinity in accordance to the 7 vows of nature. I, E, O, U, Ums. going through the body. So working with these and with these I've just put the 7 main mantras, but there are many, many, many mantras that each vibrate with different things, with different parts here. For instance, certain mantras vibrate with the spirit or with the consciousness. We can use certain mantras to go out to the astral. I've put this one often up in my lectures. The mantra for the astral, Fara On. You can use that to go to the astral. And because this mantra vibrates with the astral, because of vibratory affinity, it can bring us into the astral. I've done this. Many people have done this. I've given this to countless students, and many, many, many people have gone to the astral just using this very simple mantra while falling asleep. So this is the power of mantra. This is why mantra works, using the power of vibratory affinities. And again, also, because it is moved or strengthened by our own creative energies, by the force of our creative energy. So this takes us on to the power of the word itself. So I've been talking a lot here about the force of the energy of creation and the power of the creative word used by these great beings at the beginning of creation. But what I really want to talk about is the power of the word that we have. Yeah, the power of the word that we ourselves use. Because even just as he said, in a simple way, the word has a lot of power. The word has a karmic power in the fact that the way we use it can create huge change within the people around us. You understand what I mean? If you're like, for instance, if you're in a position of power, like these big presidents and prime ministers and whatever, then your word has a lot of power. If I say we go to war, we go to war. You know what I mean? If I say, that's it, we're not going to give any money to the people, then many people might go hungry. And so the word already has a very heavy karmic value. So you could say the word is weighed, if you understand what I mean. The word is weighed. Every word that we give is weighed in the karmic scale. Yeah. And of course, this means that anytime we speak, we're putting ourselves in that position. Anytime that I have an argument with someone, anytime I talk to anyone, really, there is a karmic factor inside the word itself. And we have to sort of take that into account. There's a lot of this, you can't say this nowadays. But in general, any time that I use the word at all, I'm putting myself, I'm putting myself at risk. You understand what I mean? Because it's true. Yeah? You tell the guy, the guy singing on the side, you tell him, hey, shut up. And maybe you're like the last one. Everyone's telling him to shut up, and you're like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and he finally goes, that's it. I haven't got a voice. And this great singing career that he was going to have is finally destroyed. Was it that one person was about to walk past and go, that's the sound. That's the sound. That's the one that's going to take us all away. That's the sound we've been looking for, Ricky. That's going to take it. That's all. And you just 2 minutes before told him to shut up and go sing inside. And that's it. You're now karmically responsible for ruining his life. So the power of the word's very profound. Many people, are born like that. You meet people who are really quiet. You meet people. I'm not a quiet person, but I know people who are very quiet. That you try to talk and say, hey, could you speak up? Could you talk up? Yeah, I am talking. I'm talking. I got a friend like that. He's Brazilian, but he's German descent, and his wife also Brazilian, but she's Chinese descent. Because there's a lot of diversity in Brazil, and you don't realize till you go there, right? And Australia's not the only diverse place, people. And he's got just the quietest voice you ever heard, and his wife is just so loud. She's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he's like, "I thought that we would talk with you, Michael, about this." But he had it, you know what I mean? It's like this, So that person may have misused the word in a past life. In this life, they can barely use the word, you know what I mean? This is karma. You know what I mean? This is the karmic value of the word. Perhaps they were, misusing the word against people or for whatever reason, etc. And so now that is taken away from them. The power of the word is taken from them. I'm not saying not to use it, but we need to understand that every time I use the word, it is it's what's going to happen. So The word has this weight. The word has this power. Now, as he said, a lot of that power is going to come from the degree of transmutation of the person. If the person is transmuting their energies and they're working with their creative energies, they're going to have a strong word. It may not be, it doesn't mean it's not a violent word, but a strong word. I've given that example before about you see some of these spiritual leaders who are like iron, but gentle iron. You know what I mean? Like I love. It's a shame he's getting so old, but man, I love the Dalai Lama. Such a beautiful example. He politically, the guy is like a baseball bat, an iron baseball bat. Anyone he comes up against, he destroys them. But he destroys them gently. He destroys them with an impeccable will. He disagrees with people, huge, high-ranking officials. No, you're wrong. He's got the Indian accent because he learned English in India. And he's like, no, I think that you are wrong. And the person's like, And he's there just crushing people, crushing them in debates. They can't win against him. That power, that force, he doesn't feel like he has to try and steal power or force off the people. He doesn't feel like he has to get angry to be strong. We feel like that all the time. We feel like we have to be angry to be strong because we lack strength inside. If I had the transmuted force of myself and I had strength inside of myself, I wouldn't need to go and get it off other people because I would already have it. If someone says, no, you're going to do this, you'd say, no, I'm not going to do that. And they push, you go, I'm going to kill you. Okay, then kill me then. I'm not going to do it. End of story, you know what I mean? And so that's force. The person has real power within themselves. That comes from the sexual force within the person, the creative sexual force. If transmuted, like in the practice we've been giving here, the hamsa, the alchemy, this can create incredible power within the person. We're not doing it to create power in the word, but it's a natural byproduct of the work that we're doing to liberate ourselves from creation, is power will be created in that word naturally. So in that sense, right, moving on, this therefore needs to show us about the weight of the word. So if the word has weight, if the word is weighed, if our words are weighed at the end of our life before the lords of karma, then in that sense, what we have to keep in mind, therefore, is the weight that the word bears, therefore. The word that I'm using, how much force does that word have, if you understand what I mean? And I'm not saying are you being aggressive with everybody all the time? Yes, I'll have 2 of those. Thank you. I'm not talking about that, I'm not talking about fake. It was what my friend called it once, fake fire. We were going for a walk once, and we were walking through town, and he really liked to keep up with internet things. He was raised on 4chan. If you don't know what that means, that's fine. But if you do, it's a very unfortunate occurrence. It's basically he's raised by Reddit with no moderators. And anyway, he was talking to me about fake fire. We were walking along, and there was a group of sort of thuggy teenagers walking along. What do they call them? Eshays? Lads? They didn't have the word eshay back then. They were just thugs. And they were kind of walking along like that. And my friend he did this thing where he just stared at them like that and then just walked straight into them. He's a very theatrical person. So this is literally, he looked like that. He went like that and he just stared at them and just walked and they just parted. What? Afterwards he walked away. What did you do? What was that? And he goes, fake fire, man. Fake fire. Like, what do you mean? He goes, they were full of fake fire. They were pretending to be full of force, but they didn't have real force. He said, I showed them real force. he said, I was willing to tread upon them with my feet. And he said, they knew that and it terrified them, so they were forced to move. You know what I mean? It's he used to always laugh and tell me he was making his life into a video game. And he'd be like, see? And I understand that works. I'm sure you can get lots of old ladies to move out of the way too. Hilariously, actually, some of the people who don't have fake fire might be the ones who are scariest. You try and do that to an old Italian lady, she's probably going to hit you with a bag. You know what I mean? She's like, you were stupid, man. What are you doing? I'm sorry. But, so I understand what he's saying. So what he was beginning to understand is he was actually beginning to understand a little bit more of how the force and energy works through these different centers, And there are people who use this positively and negatively, Doing stuff like that is really kind of a negative use. You're playing with other people. It's not really a good idea, you understand? You're actually way better off just not getting involved in these sorts of situations. But as I said, this force, This force is going to create a lot of weight within the word. It's going to create a lot of power within the word. But at the same time, the other thing that creates the largest amount of power, right, is actually this. It's how our word is tied to our actions. Yeah? If our word is tied to our action, our word will have weight because we fulfill our word. We do not speak mechanically. Usually, we speak very mechanically. I talk about things and I say I'm going to do things. And as I said, I have, in our society, we tend to divorce our word from action. Politicians talk about doing a lot of stuff and then they don't do it. At the moment, everyone's terrified because Trump said he was going to do a bunch of stuff and then he did it. And everyone's like, wait a second, whoa, politicians don't do what they say. They just say they're going to do it and then they don't do it, yeah? Good or bad, who cares? The point is he did he's doing what he said he was going to do, yeah? So this is the whole thing. Normally in politics, we actually expect politicians not to fulfill their word. You know what I mean? We expect them to talk a lot and we don't trust their word. And it's the same thing. If you meet a person who doesn't fulfill their word, you often don't, it's not that you don't trust them. That's such a harsh word. I mean, like, as in, we may not be interested in listening to them. You know what I mean? I won't be, if I meet a person who fulfills their word, this is a different case. Because I know that person, you can hear it, the command in the person's voice. I'll give you an example. Abraham Lincoln, my father told me this story. He studied a lot about Abraham Lincoln's life. And he said that in Abraham Lincoln's life, when he was trying to sort of win this civil war that was just a huge mess, like the whole of America was against itself. We don't know much about it in Australia because it just didn't affect us. But it's quite amazing. They were going through this whole fight. And when Abraham Lincoln sort of started to take over this whole thing, he had to sort of choose a cabinet, choose people who were going to do things and generals, etc. And he chose, for one of his main generals, he chose this like country bumpkin. And people were very upset with him because usually you would choose noblemen, even though, you don't know if you know about Lincoln, but Lincoln was a nobody who'd literally only read 2 books in his entire life, the Bible and Pilgrim's Progress. Do you know what I mean? Like 3, sorry, he also read a Bible. He also read a dictionary. And so, who became a lawyer just by reading books and figuring it out. You know what I mean? Amazing story when you hear about this guy. But he chose this guy, who was a nobody. Usually they would choose these very important noblemen's sons for financial reasons, basically. You put this guy in charge. You don't really care about him. You would just, because basically he's just going to look over that. You're going to tell him what to do mostly anyway. Do you know what I mean? But also they're very well intellectually educated, these guys, because they're all from noble families. They're all very well educated. So it's sort of thought that in regards to strategy, these will be the guys you want to have around you, right? And so Lincoln started off by making one of his main generals a farmer from nowhere. And they were like, why? Why would you do that? I remember his political advice, what the hell's wrong with you? It's like, you need to put someone really important. And he said to him, he goes, he grew up on a farm. He's the man I want. And they said, what does that mean? He says, that man, I'm going to butcher his accent. He goes, that man does what he says and says what he does. That's the sort of man I want running my army. And it was like, he put this guy, and it's true, he literally just said to him, I want you to build a railway line from one side of America to the other so that we can have a full supply line for the entire war without any problems. And the guy did it in like a few months. Just like that. Bam! Just because he just did it. Because he said, and that's what Lincoln said. Lincoln said the reason why this guy's great is because he grew up, as a child, he grew up working hard. And so he knows what hard work is. And I know with him that anything that he says, he'll do. And anything, so if I say to him, do it, and he can do it, he'll do it. If I say to him, do it, and he can't do it, he'll tell me. So there's no mucking around. You see what I mean? That guy's word and action are perfectly linked. That guy's word has power. When that guy says, I'm going to shoot, everyone moves. Because they know he's not bluffing. Because he doesn't bluff. He wouldn't say unless he meant it. And so this is what I mean. A person with real power in the word is because their word is tied to action. The stronger it's tied to action, the more weight their word will carry. And this happens a lot. People say, oh, no one listens to me. Yeah. Well, in reality, it's because we need to make sure that our word is carried out. Stop making stupid promises. Don't align ourselves with things that we actually don't care about. Don't offer to do things that we're not actually going to do it. We actually have to marry this together and be quite serious, which often means, and this is harsh, doing things you don't want to do just to fulfill your word. Yeah? It's like a massive problem in our society. You know, I know we're not allowed to talk about race, but man, the English people used to be all about the word. When you go back to Arthur and all these guys, what are they talking about? The word was everything. It was like a man's word was his honor. Yes, on my honor and my word. Word and honor were the same thing. Yeah, and a person didn't keep his word was really badly thought of. You know, it's like no. Nowadays, as I said, political leaders are just expected not to, which is just insane. But that's the way it was. And so we've lost that. We've lost the idea of a promise. We've created all these systems. Like the legal system isn't actually based around using the word correctly. What we do is we go and write up these contracts. You wouldn't need contracts if the two people had the correct word. Because they would say, are we together? Are we on this? Okay. You're with me? With me. Okay. That's it. That's all you would need. But instead, what you do is you write up a huge contract. It's all written word. And then the other guys write the whole contract. And then you go and send 20 lawyers on each contract to try and find ways you can screw the other person over. That's not using the word properly. And even some people actually have that way of thinking of like, if I can find something in that contract that you didn't stipulate or whatever, I've won, and then you accept the fact that you lost, and that's just the way it is, and we're happy. It's like, that's a crazy way of thinking. But that's normal business practice. Do you know what I mean? And so that's actually not based upon a pure word, upon the force of the word. And this is sort of corrupted society. And we can see this in many ways. You see the corruption of the general use of the word. Every time we see the old way of speaking, we can see that it's actually steeped in a lot of honor and the correctness of terms. I remember, it's interesting, we were talking earlier about Tolkien. I read a book about C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and the little group of people they had, because they were studying a lot of this Kabbalah and stuff themselves, these men. And it's interesting, C.S. Lewis, who's very interesting, is a guy who wrote Narnia, he was raised by... his parents made him go and stay with this man for his early life who was really, really strong about the correctness of terms. So he wrote him a letter saying, I'm coming to see you, you know, and talking about the train, all this sort of stuff. And the man just basically took the letter and just in red pen wrote everywhere where every word that was used incorrectly, not the actual correct use of that word, the correct statement, the correct grammar, and then just gave it to him. The kid's like 14. He's like, here you go. Welcome to living with me. This is completely incorrect. Words mean something. You don't know what they mean. Learn what they mean, you know? And you could say, oh, what a horrible guy. And yet C.S. Lewis wrote some of the most beautiful children's fiction of all time, being trained by and he looks back on that man with a lot of respect because the man used his word impeccably. Every word the man said every word has a very specific meaning. And like today we were like, you know, the guy had riz. I was so cringe that I didn't know how much riz and the cringe and what are these other words people use? You know what I mean? Like, and doesn't really actually work. It's sort of a bastardization of another word. But so we don't have that anymore. Now, I'm not saying that we need to go back to this old way of speaking. We're not all going to walk around and say, are thou sure of this? You know, nah, because people are just not going to understand you. It's a waste of time. What we are doing, though, is to learn to fulfill the word. The word should be contract. You understand what I mean? If I'm going to do something, I'm there. And that means, as I said, in the beginning, it means hard times where you have to fulfill your word even though you don't want to. That happens. I say to people, you know, someone says, oh, you know, I'm doing that. Can you give me a hand? And I say, yes. And then afterwards, I'm like, I don't want to help this weekend. It's my weekend off. You know, I don't want to do that. And then you know what you do? You go anyway because you gave your word. And you know what you should learn? Stop giving your word stupidly. It's your own fault. You go there, you have the bad time in the weekend. Why you don't? You learn to transform the impression. But you go through it, and then next time, maybe you'll be more careful with your word. Rather than sit down and try to figure out a way to weasel my way out of it, you know? How can I write this in such a way? I used to have a guy who would work for me. I fix things. I'm a handyman. I used to have a guy who used to work for me, and he, if he made a mistake on the job, he would try to take a photo of the job because he had to send me a finished photo. He'd try to take a photo in such a way that I couldn't see it. Yeah, I remember he had to do this repair of this door frame once because termites had eaten it. And I got a call from the company. It was a very expensive, rich company in the Gold Coast, Kaloshi Real Estate. They said, he's only done half the job. I said, he's destroyed the whole wall while he did it. I'm like, destroyed the whole wall? What's going on? They said, yeah, he's taken a crowbar and ripped the wall to pieces to fix it. That's crazy. So I get there on site, and what he's done, he hasn't done anything wrong. But the photo I'm looking there, and the termites have actually eaten through the plaster as well. So it looks like all these scratches going towards the door frame, but in reality, they've eaten the frame, and they've also eaten into the plaster. And then I look at the photo he sent me, and he's just taken a photo of exactly the frame, like from the end of the hallway, so you can't see the wall. It's destroyed. And I called him, what have you done? He goes, I didn't really feel like plastering it, and it wasn't on the job invoice, and I kind of wanted to leave early. So I just left us. Yeah, but now they're blaming us for scratching the wall, and I can't explain to them that it was actually the termites. And so then I had to spend the next 2 hours skimming the entire wall with plaster to fix this huge thing. You know what I mean? When what we could have done is actually explain to them what the real problem was and fixed it, like pulled the plaster. I don't know, done something, whatever, got paid for it. But instead, But this is what I mean. We're always trying to find that nifty way out. I took the photo on the side and then writing it in such a way that it doesn't sort of convey a yes or a no. Someone says, oh, do you want to do this? Oh, well, maybe, yes. I mean, I would love to do that. Well, could you come? I'd love to come if I could. I don't know. Yeah, and so we're always there trying to sort of, but we just don't have that force in the word. So, again, the word must be tied to action. So it takes us to the final part, which is obviously the internal word. Yep. And this, of course, is the word that I use in the mind. So the last way we use the word is mentally. We're thinking constantly. We talk to ourselves constantly. It's actually quite insane, Have you ever caught yourself just narrating what you're doing? Like you're doing something, I'm just going to go over here and get a cup of tea now. And I can just pick that up. I'm going to drink that. Sweet. And I've caught myself doing that sometimes. And it's just so annoying. It's like, if you're doing it outside, you would be mad. And there are people who do that. So, people with the intellectual disabilities who actually can't contain all of their mental chatter, and they have to say it out loud. And you see there's lots of guys like that in Byron, walking down the streets and in Mullum and stuff. And you hear them, and they're just like, and they're just saying everything that comes to their mind. The only difference between us and them is we're able to contain it. Do you know what I mean? And then they're consumed by it. I remember there was a guy in my on the train where I used to go to school. I used to have to take two train and a bus to get to school. And I remember if you didn't know who he was, you would think, oh, look, there's 2 seats free on a full train. And there was this guy, he would sit there, and there would always be 2 seats free next to him. And he would just sit there like that, And I remember my father and I would always laugh because we would never sit next to him because the guy was completely insane. And I remember someone would always get on the train, a newbie who wouldn't know who he is, and then sit there with their paper or something. And he'd just sit there and he'd just go he'd just be sitting there, And then he'd just kind of go, he'd just start going. And he'd just go, no, Mum, I can't do it any longer. Shut up, no. Like that. And there'd always be someone with like a book, because this is before phones. There's someone with a book just kind of going, trying to read. I'm not judging him, but what the hell am I doing here? You know what I mean? Like, I can't move. That would be rude. Oh, gosh. And I'm just sitting there reading a paper, and he's like whacking the bar. No, what are you saying? I can't do that. No, shut up. And it was like, what he's doing is actually, you can see what it is, because it was always about his mum. He's obviously lives with his mother, and he's always, having difficulties, as you do when you live with anyone. There's always something going on in your mind. But he's saying it out loud. He's having that argument that you're having in your head with your parents or something that you're trying to sort out before you go see them, out loud, in front of everybody, in front of the whole train. You know what I mean? And that crazy bit where you yell and scream is going on at the top of his lungs. And that's his mental chatter. So our mind, we don't use the word correctly in the mind. We may be, for very quiet and not use my physical word very much, but in my in my mind, my internal word, I'm flaying people alive. You know what I mean? I can be the nicest person. Oh, yes, thank you very much. Thank you, sir. It's a lovely day. Thank you so much. Come again, come again. But in my mind, I'm there, you know, taking them to the cave. Horrible person. You know, what's that? What is it? We have our Dante works for a man at the potato stand at the markets, and they get some difficult customers there. You know, and, you know, like one of the customers, for instance, doesn't like to pay money. They really struggle with money in all forms of giving money, and when they give money, she walks and she goes like this. Like she won't look at you because she hates paying money. She just hates paying money, and the guy there, he doesn't like it. He can't even serve her anymore. He can't even talk to her.
She only does it to him.
She only does to him. She did it to my father as well. My father learned how to deal with her. Yeah, I remember my father was really nice to her and started to feel sorry for her, you know. Remember she said once, "Oh, the store's so muddy." You know, my father said, "You know what? Next time, I'm going to bring a nice red carpet just for you." You know what I mean? And you know what she said? "Would you really do that?" And he said, "It would make you feel good. I'd do it just for you." You know what I mean? And he meant it. He wasn't being rude. You know, and so from then on in, she loved him. You know what I mean? He gave her 5 cents off once. You know, you know. But the other guy there, he flays her. He never says a word to her. Never tells her he doesn't like her. But in his mind, he kills her. You know, we hate them. You know, in the mind, like it's the same thing. You can say, "Oh, I've never yelled at anyone on the road," but in the mind, "How dare you cut me off, you idiot! You idiot! Where did you learn to drive, huh? Where did you get your license? A cereal packet?" You know, full of anger and rage, you know. But we don't know, yeah? This is the internal world. So with the internal world, I can be there. And you know, the internal world can be like that. You're just walking down the street. And many people like that. They're quiet, but down the street, they're just like, "Look at these people. Idiot, poor, gay. What's this person doing? Smelly. You disgust me." You know, and you're just there looking at the mind, you know, judging everyone as you walk past. And even sometimes you may notice, "Oh, I don't want to think that." Because people do that. They look at someone and there's little judgments going on in the mind, yeah? All the time, little judgments. "Oh, that person's like this, etc., etc., etc." So we can be really quiet, but maybe our internal world is there. And that's what I mean. You see that very often in like the Christian person. "Oh, I never say anything. I never say anything. I never say anything. I'm always lovely." And so, yeah, but you kind of just horribly judge everyone quietly in your own mind, don't you, Mum? You know, it's like, "Oh, I never say anything. I never say anything. Nothing at all. Nothing at all." You having a hard time this week, dear? You've been having a bit of a difficult time? Which is code for your house is untidy. Are you having a hard time? Obviously, that's the only reason why you are living your house in such a disgusting state. You know, which means what? She walks in the room and goes, "Smelly, stinky, that's out of place, dirty. Do they ever clean the floors? Look at the ceiling. My God, cobwebs. There's got to be generations up there. Smelly, children, stinky, disgusting. You know. Oh, hello, darling. Lovely to see you. Everything's fantastic. Ooh, it's like 5 marks on your shirt. Oh, gosh, have you ever washed that one? I don't know. Do you know how to use a washing machine, darling? Oh, no, we're great. We're great. Everything's fine. Yeah, this is the mind. You know. So with the mind, you can be there. You're abusing people. You know, and you say, "Oh, I don't use my words, so I'm fine." No, yeah. This is the problem with the word, yeah. That's why the Christ talks about things like that. You know, you need only look at a person and commit adultery, things like that. He's telling you about the mind, yeah, the power of the internal word too. It's the same thing. I don't want to go into it, but it's the same thing when people, you know, you can sort of put yourself down a lot with the internal word as well. You know, we're there just berating ourselves constantly, or the opposite, puffing ourselves up. You know, like the person who goes to I remember when I used to work at a cafe in the middle of Adelaide, and it's one of my very first jobs. I was 17, and me and another staff member and I we got called to the office on separate occasions. And I spent, he was such a difficult boss. Rather than just like say, hey, can you step in here? Great. He'd say, hey, can I talk to you after shift? And it's like, that's like 6 hours of thinking about what he's going to ask. Do you know what I mean? So I got like 6 hours there, like making coffees, and everything's mechanical. You've learned how to make the milk perfectly. I was making like 500. We were in this coffee, what's it called, production line. So literally like one person pours a shot, one person does the milk and then slides it down the back counter. The other person grabs the milk, cleans it, throws the milk back. And it's like, it was a production line. Another person takes the order. It's 4 of us. And you just do, you get so mechanical after a while. You're even just there adjusting the grind. You're not even looking at it anymore. And the whole time in the mind, it's like, he's going to fire me, isn't he? He's going to fire me. It's because of that banana bread that I got. It was going off and they said to throw it away, but it's a franchise chain, and I just took it home because it was past the due date. But I don't want to throw it away. It wasn't rotten, and it's that, isn't it? It's because I've been taking the bloody banana bread home. He's gonna lose it at me. It's like I'm gonna get fired, and you're there like, oh, what am I gonna do? And walking in, and I spent the whole day, like, oh my god, you're an idiot. What have you done this time? What have you done here? And then I went in there. I got a promotion. I got a promotion. I was like, oh, okay. He said, I want you to be a supervisor, but I know you can't work weekends, so I can't make you a supervisor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the supervisor pay, and you're now the unofficial supervisor whenever any other supervisor's not here. And I was like, And then he said, is there anything I can do for you? You're such a great worker. I was like, you're 17, your first job. Like, oh, thanks. Great. And this other girl went in, and she used to grate on everyone. She grated on absolutely everybody's nerves, literally annoyed everybody in the whole workplace. And he did the same thing to her. He told her one day, said, I'm going to bring her in. And she spent the whole day telling us about how she was going to get a promotion. It was like the opposite. It was amazing. She kept saying to me, I'm going to get promoted. It's so great. I've been working here. I've been doing overtime and all this sort of stuff. She would catch everybody else's shifts so they wouldn't do it, all that sort of stuff. But she was just very difficult psychologically to work with. I don't know how to explain, but just very difficult. And she went in there and he just got told off. He said, you are annoying everybody. Can you please stop acting like a supervisor? You're not a supervisor. Please leave everyone alone. You are not in charge. You need to stop. And she came out like, oh, how could this happen? And this is the mind. Yeah. One person there, it was so great. Don't worry, I've had the other thing happen as well. I've had someone call me and I thought I was going to tell me it was good news, and then it's like, it's the opposite. Don't worry. And I'm sure she's had the opposite. But the mind happens like that. You puff yourself up and then you get humiliated. You put yourself down and you get exalted. This is the mind. So the mind is wasting huge amounts of energy, massive amounts. You're exhausted. I remember when he finally talked to me, I was walking through the door and I was like, here we go. It was my first ever job. And it was like when he tells you, like, and then I was exhausted. I had to ride home and I was like, my bike was like, trying to ride my bike. I was exhausted because I had spent all my mental energy that whole day arguing in my mind. No, it must be something good. No, it's definitely something bad. No, it must be this one thing. So this is the mental word. Therefore, the mental word drains huge amounts of psychological energy. If we were able to, of course, it'd be much better to simply finish with that in the moment. To dissect that thought, which is what we teach in Gnosis, in the moment. So the moment comes, and the guy says to us, that's it, I need to see you in the office. You think, could it be this? Could it be that? So you stop and go, okay, well, let's stop. Yep, okay, what have we done? There's this. Okay, so he's going to tell me off. What happens if he tells me off? Well, he's not going to fire me. That's going way too far. So he'll probably just tell me off, and then, well, I'll take it because I deserve it. Other side, he's going to give something. Well, then nothing to worry about. That's great. And then, finish with that in the mind. Do you see? Finish. Sit down, meditate for 5 minutes. Remove the thought, like you would call it, like a splinter. Remove the splinter, like that, and then clean slate for the rest of the day. Talk with the customers. Be happy. Rather than every customer comes in, hey, how you going? Hi. Sorry, I'm just thinking about a whole bunch of nonsense. Yeah. So that's the thing. You see that. Like what is it? I used to work for a guy. He said, what did he say? You can always tell a difficult cafe because everyone's head's down. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's like that the whole time. And you look, you say, hello. They look at you like, what? What do you want? What do you want? A smoothie? Oh, God. Oh, my God. I don't know if we have any ice. Oh, why are you even ordering things? You know? But everyone's heads down. Whereas you go to a place, I love, you know, when you go, I like it. Byron's always so laid back. You go to Byron, there you go, hey, yeah, man. You know, or like the lady at the markets, you know, was it Frank breakfast? You know, everyone's, it's such an easy going, you know. No, you get fired, so that heads down, you know. So wasting huge amounts of energy on the internal world. So obviously the antidote for that is to learn to dissect and dissolve the unnecessary thoughts from the mind, like that. Yeah, and that can be like that. We have our break, sit down, relax, empty the mind of thoughts, and then if a thought comes in after we've emptied it, that just gets stuck. You know, it's like that one thought. We look at it and we dissect it and we discard it. What's the reality? What can I do right now? Yeah? I can walk up to him right now and be like, just tell me you're killing me. What is it? Is it good or is it bad? And he goes, it's bad. And you're like, oh my God. Let's talk later. I don't want to know. But that's it. You know, you just tell me. You know, I had a friend like that. It was like this. Oh, can we talk about later? He said, no, there's no later. Talk right now. What is it? We don't have time. I don't care. Tell me right now. I'll be thinking about it all day. I'm like, all right. Could I tell him? Be like, okay, good. Oh, that's horrible. Now I'm going to think about it all day. I'm like, why would you ask me? I wouldn't tell you at the end of the day so you wouldn't think about it all day. I said, yeah, but I would have thought about you telling me all day. You know, that's the mental word. Yeah, that's the mental word. So, yeah, bad news at the end of the day so you can sleep on it. Okay. So, yeah, so in that sense, we can then discard the thought and then move our way out of that situation. Yeah. Do you have any questions about that at this time? No? That fan. It just does it occasionally. There's nothing I can do. Sorry? I don't think I can. I think you can just hear it in the thing in the background.
That's character.
Yeah.
Someone's probably making the same sound. You just can't hear it.
Oh, the vibratory affinity. It just finds that spot occasionally. Usually it's fine, and then it just... It's all right. I can reset it. I'll fix it. Anyway, yeah. Okay. You guys up for a practice?
Okay. Just one thing.
Yeah, of course.
On the bottom right, you've got the Brahma, Prana, Akash.
Akash. Yes, so the Akashas, this was just, I just put, this is a bit of the Hindu. Yeah? And so they talk about, Brahma is another word for the absolute. Brahma, and then outside of Brahma, you have like the Mula Prakriti, which is existing just on the outside here, yeah? And, which often is referred to as the Great Cosmic Mother. But the Mula Prakriti, which is the seeds of creation, yeah? And then Prana is the energy that comes out of the absolute. It's the force and the energy of the absolute itself, yeah? And so I was sort of pointing out, and then you would have the people singing the force into creation, and the force that they would sing into creation, the power coming from their word would be Prana, and then the Akash is the geometric form of creation. Akash is the first tattva. It's the first energetic signature that exists, and it is sound. The word means sound and geometry, the same word. And then from Akash densifies down eventually and becomes ether, and then it densifies down and becomes the tattvas, which is like the vibrations of ether, and then it becomes the four elements, which isn't just the four elements like it's in fire. It's also the building blocks of everything. It's energy in a physical, like petrious form, in a liquid form, in a gas form, and in what's the last one? Igneous form, as pure energy, like fire, things that are being burnt, and electricity. That's another talk, though. We talk about the tattvas in a few weeks. But I just wanted to put it in there just to sort of explain that the Hindus actually have it. They actually talk about one of the building blocks at the beginning of creation is sound, specifically. You know, that force. Brahma breathes prana into creation. That prana densifies down and becomes Akash. Sometimes they put Mula Prakriti in between, but that's because Mula Prakriti is the seeds of creation. It just depends on which text you're reading about it. Yeah. That's a question.
Great. I've got another question.
Yeah.
Yes. So, if we're talking about understanding the universal sound or the power of potency of universal sound
Yes.
in order to liberate ourselves from creation, which is what we talk about as the overall goal of
Mhm.
Gnosis.
Yes.
And then now, so we've gone from the macro to the micro to the pragmatic everyday.
Yep.
How we deal with our own word, how we keep integrity with our own word.
Yes.
Do you think that if we cannot focus on the internal word of our mind, if we cannot calm that, and we cannot, without keeping integrity of our own word and acknowledging the weight of our own word, we can't necessarily access the astral and access that absolute properly, because there might be, because there's as below so above. How we are in our daily life, it will affect how we are in our spiritual domain.
Degrees and degrees. So, like, if we were just talking about the use of the astral body, then it depends. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not quite so, like, we're definitely not going to get back to the absolute without the word cleaned, you know, but then that really is more talking about the sexual energy cleaned, which is the root of the word. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So that takes us back to transmutation and alchemy, which is the doorway back to the absolute. Yeah, that's sort of the real firm part of it. I guess what we're more trying to say is that the word is the expression of that person's internal reality. And so if there are really large amounts of contradictions inside due to the ego and not actually working on anything, then they're never going to go very far. So a person can still, for instance, like astral travel and be a mess with the word. There's heaps of people like that in the word. You meet people with amazing astral capacity who are just like a mess. Do you know what I mean? Like they never keep their word. But they're never going back to the absolute, no way. Do you know what I mean? Like they'll never get that. And even then, will they have that astral capacity in the next life? Highly unlikely. You know, they would have developed it at one point, and you'll find that people who develop that usually go through quite like sort of austere situations, like those monks and things who develop the astral capacity in a previous life, spend a really large, long period in solitude, working internally, you know, concentrating mind, emotion, everything into a point to be able to develop that force. And that's why the person reincarnated has that capacity. But then will they keep it in the next life if they just muck around, you know, like say for instance, use that to remote view and then just muck with people. We heard a story about that in early Gnosis about a young man who was amazingly clairvoyant, like amazing, like but he just mucked around. He would use it. They'd be sitting at the lunch table with all the other people at the Gnostic group, and he would tell them all what they were going to eat when they got home. Like there was a lot of guys there, and they were going to go home, and then he was telling them like what their wives were going to cook for them for dinner. You know? and he would just say things like that because he had amazing clairvoyance, and he just told, and all sorts of stuff like that. He told them like what was going to happen to their work the next day and things like this. And they say the Master Samael, who gave us this teaching, just walked up behind him once and heard him doing it, and just like put his hand into the back of his thing like that, just went, "Wow!" I just stopped him and just said, "Young man," he goes, "you are playing with this." He goes, "Work hard to create it again," and then walked off, and the guy lost all his capacity. Just took it away. He said because the guy was never going to change. He was just going to play for the rest of his life. You know, it's like he would have been like a sideshow rather than like a person really working to liberate himself. You know what I mean? I see why he did it. Cruel, but I can see why he did it. Yeah, tough love, you know, but that's what I mean. So you can still have, because you can still work here in like the magical triangle at the bottom here, down here, you know, with some level of power. You need to have some power in the word, some sexual force, you know, some sexual power. Otherwise, it won't work at all. But as we go further up, you're right. The word will need to be cleansed. There'll need to be force in the word. Plus, you're just correct, cunt. You know, you're going to go there speaking nonsense to people, telling them nonsense, lying, for instance. I completely didn't mention about lying, but of course, lying creates a huge disconnection inside the word because you create disconnection inside the whole Kabbalah. And unfortunately, we do it all the time. We do it in a tricky way because we usually do it emotionally, meaning that like I don't feel like I'm lying, but I've changed the way I feel about it. yeah, no, I'll be there. And then tomorrow I kind of don't really feel like going. You know, like we sort of, oh, yeah, no, I said I loved you, but now I'm not so sure. Maybe I never did. And it's like, I just sort of changed the way I felt about it, you know? It's like, and that, so often we become a liar because of the fact we just constantly flip between negative emotions. If I had control of my negative emotions, I wouldn't lie. Most people don't intentionally lie. That's pretty hardcore. Do you know what I mean? Usually there's a reason. It takes a lot of ill intent to do it, like on purpose, to really try and misdirect someone. Usually there's always like a little white lie on top to sort of just, it's like you're smoothing it out. But like then it's like smoothing is like you're making a patch. Like that'll do. But then you like step back and it just looks horrible. You're like, you know. But when I was up close, it looked great. So
It stands out.
it stands out. Yeah, when you come back, you're like, that was probably, you know. And I'm sure like a lot of the guys who do those horrible things in the big corporate world where they just ruin like an entire thing or something, you know, they didn't sort of intend to lie that way. But once you sort of stand back and look at, you know, the destruction to nature and all this stuff from, you know, lies, then it's like, wow, man, you really created a huge mess here, you know. So, yeah, I guess to answer the question simply, unto a point. You're right. At a certain point, the word will really have to be cleaned. And it's very worthwhile to start now because having a strong word is something that's beautiful. You know, I feel now it's getting more and more. Like, you ever tried to buy and sell things on Facebook? The word, man. You put it up, they say, is it available? You say yes, and you never hear again. Or you write to them and say, is it available? They say yes, and you never hear again. And you think, what's wrong with you? Just write, like, all you have to do is say yes or give me an address. You know, but I mean, people, the word, it's getting so fractured and so difficult to deal with people, and everyone's getting strange fears about everything, you know, like, even in my line of work where I have to repair things, often people won't answer the phone. I have to text them because they don't want to talk because they're a bit afraid of the word over the phone. And, you know, I have to text, hi, can I fix the thing? Oh, yes, sorry, I thought you were a scammer. I'm not a scammer. Can I fix the thing? Okay. You know, I have to text. You know? So, for their own reasons, who knows? I don't mean to judge, but you know what I mean. So, in that sense, yeah, we have to rescue the word from the ego. I should have read that. We have to, we have to rescue the word. That's what I want to end on here. We have to rescue the word from the ego. That's the sort of point of this, you know, because it has been stolen over our lifetime. With many lies and falsehoods and, you know, and false promises. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay. Meditation time.